everything and more has been completely wiped out.
It's a 1% all up.
Financial system is rocked to its foundation.
The speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate.
We're now down 43%.
Worst day on Wall Street since the crash of 1987.
But in short, you don't feel the bullets you dodge. And of course, we dodged a huge bullet.
The great lament of Labor when it was last in office was that few voters gave it credit for saving Australia from the global financial crisis because of the very success of its measures in staving off its worst effects. And now the Morrison government, and for that matter state governments, face a similar problem. The very success in largely keeping COVID out of Australia has helped breed what health experts, economists and political analysts say is a dangerous complacency about both vaccination and closed borders, on top of the so-called vaccine hesitancy associated with stories about blood clots.
I worry that people think that we can just continue our lives like this, that there is no risk that we will have an outbreak. And I really worry that that is delaying people going and getting what are safe vaccines. I worry that in winter we could have another outbreak.
This is the plan for a COVID-safe Australia. 3 steps.
Political messaging is important, of course, and we have seen different messages over the past year about staying closed and opening up.
We need to restart our economy. We need to restart our society. We can't keep Australia under the doona.
These border wars have got to stop.
There will be outbreaks, there will be hotspots, and you can't just shut Australia up every time there's an outbreak.
2 state election results, as well as opinion polls, show Australians have liked feeling safe as the pandemic has spread around the world, and they don't want the borders reopened.
Well, it's not universal, but the figures in news polls said 73% of people don't, and certainly that reflects what we see with voters and swing voters in focus groups. People are still really worried, and while it's like that, people are going to want to keep the borders closed.
The response to the federal budget revealed the extent to which people see the decision as an either-or one, open borders or closed.
At the moment, the big debate seems to be, how long are we Fortress Australia versus an open Australia? I think that that's the wrong framing of the question. The real question is, how long do we maintain COVID zero? How do we maintain COVID zero while still allowing Australia to open up more and more?
I think that's one of the problems we've got. This isn't, to use the term, binary. It's not off or on. The truth is our borders aren't completely shut. There are people coming in and going out, not very many. So that means we have contact with the outside world. We can't shut ourselves off.
Countries that were until recently doing about as well as Australia, such as Thailand and Taiwan, are now experiencing significant waves of infection. That's exacerbated the caution about vaccines here, with negative stories about global outbreaks outweighing the stories about the huge positive impact that vaccines have had in countries that have been doing badly until now.
So in the US, we're seeing a significant reduction in infection numbers. We're seeing a fantastic improvement in the number of people being admitted to hospital, and of course a significant reduction in the number of people who've died. That's a huge achievement. We're seeing the same in Britain.
Singapore, a country with which Australia is contemplating a travel bubble, has kept new daily cases in the double digits for the last 10 months, although it is dealing with some concerning clusters now.
The Changi Airport cluster is the largest cluster, obviously.
Professor Dale Fisher has been closely involved with the public health response in Singapore, where rapid testing and social distancing have helped stem the rapid spread of COVID through the city's migrant worker dorms.
In Singapore at the moment, we've got about 32% of the country vaccinated, so we know that 32% of people won't get severe disease. This is a situation I think Australia might find itself in going forward. Once you get up to those sort of vaccination levels, what will be your risk assessment?
More than anything, what has to change is belief and the imperative around the vaccine. You've got AstraZeneca and blood clots, you've got just this vagueness around the efficacy of it. It's not seen as a silver bullet to people. People feel safe and secure, so they're not running out to get it at the moment.
There has been a shift in the message from politicians in the past week.
I do think we actually now have to focus on giving people incentive and also giving them information about why this is necessary. So there have to be benefits from being vaccinated, and if unrestricted travel in Australia is the first part of what we can get from being vaccinated, that's fantastic.
There needs to be a few carrots so to drive that demand for it. In New Jersey, they're offering free beer for a vaccine. You know, it needs things like that to get people moving on it.
But the argument in both medical and economic circles is that vaccination rates aren't the only thing that need to start changing. Jane Halton, a former head of the Department of Health, was tasked last year with reviewing the hotel quarantine system. She thinks the quarantine system also needs to change as the risk factors of the virus change.
So we need our quarantine system not just to keep up with the virus, but preferably to be in front of where the virus is. We also, I think, need to anticipate where people are widely vaccinated and where there's different levels of risk. So, for example, Howard Springs, fantastic service, and it's good that it's scaling up, but we probably can and probably will need more of that kind of quarantine. We will continue to need hotels, and we're in the ACT where home quarantine has been run very effectively right since the beginning of the pandemic.
There's several systems in place in Singapore to make the borders a little looser, if you like, a traffic light system. So if you're coming from a high-risk country, then the rules are very much like Australia. But countries with very little disease, you can come straight into Singapore with only a test. Then there's the middle people. The quarantine is for a week only. You can do the quarantine at home, but you will be wearing a bracelet. Now, people might go shock horror over this. They would have gone shock horror a year ago over mandated masks and lockdowns. So I think we have learned to do a lot.
Overcoming vaccine hesitancy and COVID complacency will require both a change in messages and probably some small steps to give a nervous community greater confidence.
Sometimes the public and voters are well out ahead of politicians, so same-sex marriage, climate change. But on this one, I think the political leaders are going to have to lead, and they're going to have to probably just do it in bite-sized pieces. Let's try some overseas students who are fully vaccinated. Let's try some people who've got family overseas. Let's try those first. I think it's a proof of the pudding situation.
What's a realistic picture for where we're likely to be in mid-22?
Well, my hope is that their population is vaccinated to the extent of 70 or 80%. And if we speed up our rollout, we could get there earlier. We won't know where this virus will have gone in terms of mutation. We're seeing the Indian mutation at the moment, which is much more infectious. So we don't know what the virus will be doing. But if we are protected, it gives us a much stronger position to think about our borders, to think about our economy, and also to think about being able to welcome again students, some of the workers we need in our economy as well. So I think it'll be a different world. It won't necessarily be less complicated.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.